We'll now call this school building committee meeting on Wednesday, January 18th to order at 6:37 p.m. Roll call, Kristen Bagley, Kristen Denousis, here, Dan Dixon, here, Anna Desiree, here, Alita Hall, here, Christine Kennedy, here, Denise Pearson, here, Tim Shockley, here, Amy Anzalone, Mario Moreno, Don Howard,
Here.
Stephen Angel, Russ Hill, Robert Smitty, Edward Rosita,
Here.
Harold Sands,
Here.
Hillary Lehman. We have one.
Lost my signal for a second.
the stream or just the?
No, the stream's good, it's just the connection's bad, it keeps popping out. There it is.
Don, can you go over emergency evacuation for us?
Yes, in the case of emergency, the number of exits is one right here on the other side of this wall. You can go through those doors and make a left, you can go out the doors you came in.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to item 3, approval of minutes.
We have 3 sets.
Yes. Well, does anyone have any edits to minutes for December 7th, 2022? December 21st? And January 4th? The best thing I always say is look at the roll call. I know some folks have to come late and sometimes don't get marked. Just make sure I know this. Mr. Pearson's name is missing in January 12 minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the 3 sets of minutes as a block? I make a motion. Motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
Is it okay, like if I was absent from one, so I technically wouldn't approve, can they still be part of the block approval?
You can vote. It's purely administrative and procedural. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Kristen Danusis. Accept. Ann Dixon.
Yes. Yes.
Anna Dosri-Scutu. Alita Hall.
Yeah.
Christine Kennedy.
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Kim Shockley.
Yes.
Hillary Levon. 8 in the affirmative, 7 in the negative. You guys have it. Item number 4, location property update discussion.
I put this on there because the location changed after our last meeting, but before town council. So I didn't know if we wanted to kind of update the committee on what's transpired since our last meeting.
Yeah, so there was talk about letting this committee know beforehand, but I didn't want to risk violating OMA because I don't want people to go back and forth. We found out that the Almax property is under contract currently. So we had to move on to Plan B. We had discussions among the leadership of this committee and with Phil and Don about other options. We moved away in terms of the annex property, knowing all of the work that comes with that in terms of demolition and the unknowns from demolition, the costs associated with moving the bus depot and all of the offices that are in there. So we started looking at the plan that was sort of fleshed out 2 years ago with the other proposal at the middle school site, and then also looked at some other parcels for sale in town. So that's where we're at the moment. The sale isn't final with that Tyoke Ave property. The realtor told us if anything changed, they would be back in touch with us, so we're on their list. So we'll monitor that and see where it goes from there. But right now, the new primary target for the location of the new school would be on the Feinstein Middle School property, which I'm sure we'll hear more about later this evening. And then in terms of property, we did get back assessments on 2 of the elementary schools just recently. And both of them came in, I believe, the Tyoke school property market value was around 1.6 million. And the value of the Hopkins Hill property was around 1.3.
I think it was 1.5.
1.5 million.
1.5.
So that was some information. The BlackRock one isn't done yet because when we initially went out to do the appraisals, we were only consolidating the 2 at the time. So that was added a couple of weeks ago. So it's just still has that 4-week lead time. So we should get that probably the first week in February, an understanding of what that property value is going to be. Yeah.
Hillary, did you get a chance yet to look at the reports, and do they have any place in them whether or not they're saleable? Or would they not know?
There's full detail, but they're like 45-page documents. I didn't get to go through.
I did upload them into our documents
Oh,
folder
great.
and our shared drive. I did it
They're,
today.
they're hefty. There's a lot of detail in there, so, yeah,
69 pages.
These are
Yeah.
two.
there's two. We only have two.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, this
Yep.
is two reports.
Could you pass one of them up to me just so we can get an idea?
We can see both of them.
They do have values in there, in terms of, you know, with building, without building, but the price that I'm telling you is the market value. It's the big number in bold they put at the bottom of the summary page is true value. Any comments, questions on the location properties?
The only thing I will mention, because I get emails from parents in the community, is after we did our presentation to the town council, which included a potential shift in property to the middle school site. I did have a few parents who live in that area just reach out to me and, you know, express their concern because there's already some traffic issues and parking issues associated with the middle school. And they're worried about another school overburdening what is already a burden. So I told them that I would bring it to the committee and that obviously when we look at this project, we'd be considering all of that. Because I don't want to speak out of school, but I think in the design, the initial design, we had found a second and third maybe entrance point or third and fourth entrance point through the park and then above the park, which gives us more access to the property.
Foster Field, is that what you're talking about?
Mhm. And then the other thing that I had said to Phil is, you know, when we get on that property, if that's where we end up going and we're looking to, lay out where the building is going to be, it's going to, just by default, improve some of the layout around the sides and the back of the existing high school, middle school, which I think will help alleviate some of the pattern issues.
The concerns that I was getting to, people are automatically assuming that the traffic's gonna come from where the middle school entrance is. Everybody assumed, oh, then more people are gonna go through that one entrance on 116. So I've been explaining that there's gonna be alternate entrances and it's not gonna all be flooded there.
Yeah, because what occurred to me was, I believe, in some instances, elementary school will be getting out when after school sports will be happening. So there's that overlap there where parents are showing up, trying to park. I think the kids walk across the street to the baseball field, don't they?
I
When
think
they
they do.
play. So just, things like that. There's a whole school getting out when athletics are happening.
But, just one example of how things could be very different there. So when we were doing the middle school design before, we talked about, what do they call it, Phil? Like depot model where the buses line up in order.
Chevron parking.
Right, and they stack them that way for people to come out and get on their buses. Right now, we don't have that. It's end to end. So when the buses come into the middle school, they're parked end to end. It takes up space from one corner of the building almost all the way to where the parents are waiting to pick up. And so an example like that is where you could get a lot of space taken up for really no reason. If we were able to make some adjustments, we might be able to fix that issue.
Would you argue that the middle school front area, the driveway and parking lot could be all reconfigured in a better way, or?
I think it could be, I'm not an engineer, but I think it could be. It was never, the way it's set up now was never built for the volume of cars that we have coming in.
Our parking lot might be the worst thing ever at that middle school, just people showing up for Saturday rec games, the whole parking lot's filled in a way that you're never getting in.
Yeah.
There's no real method to the parking madness. The only thing worse is foster fields.
So we might be able to correct some of that.
Yeah, that would be really great.
I'm not making promises, but we might be able.
I heard from.
No,
Yeah.
But if we correct some of that, is that included in the project plan?
I don't know.
Cost?
We'd have to figure that out.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, great, thank you.
And if we're talking about this stuff later, we can wait till there,
Yeah.
let you give your.
What were the other sites that were examined?
There were some other properties for sale that were looked at near the Hopkins Hill area. I
There was,
think.
there was one up by the center of New England,
Yep.
if I remember correctly. It was a smaller lot, but that was for sale. In my opinion, not a great location. And then there was one Was it further down Tyo towards the Exeter West Greenwich line?
Mhm.
Also not a great spot, but it was for sale. I know Mr. Pearson had found 2 or 3 of them.
Just looking, Googling.
Earlier,
For sale.
sorry, earlier when we looked at this, the sites that were sized appropriately were west of Western.
Yeah.
Which was why that one parcel was appealing. When we thought it was for sale.
Any further discussion on location, property update? Nope. Item number 5, facilities condition index scores discussion.
I only put that on the agenda because last meeting we had not received our score yet. And so we did get our score in for Hopkins Hill. And I don't know what the exact number it was. I don't know if Phil knows, but it was over 65, right? And that's where we need to be. So
We
the
want
bottom
it.
line is,
Yes,
I thought we wanted to go-
we want to,
no, you want to be over 65, so it qualifies for that additional incentive that.
It's bad for good.
Right.
Yeah.
so what it means is we're gonna get that incentive.
100%. I was-
Bottom line is we get that kicker.
What about Western? Were you doing Western also?
So I don't know if we did Western this time because we weren't doing anything to Western. Did we do Western? Yeah, we did do Western.
gonna do
Right, you were there, right? Did
You
we
did
do
Western,
Western?
yeah.
So we just don't have that one back, but I do have the Hopkins Hill one. Because he did both that day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we only need 1 to qualify, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yep. And the fact that
and you
it's-
have to demolish the one that qualifies, so. that's-
Do you have to actually tear it?
I'm sorry, you abandoned it, as a-
Okay.
you leave it as a school, you're not,
I'm like.
it's not a school
okay.
for you. You don't have to knock it down, I take that back, scratch that.
So that's pretty straightforward. Any further questions or discussion on the FCI scores? All right, great. Item number 6, presentation of SBC project stage 2. Bill, the floor is yours.
Great, so we will go through an abbreviated and modified presentation that we gave to town council as an update. Part of the process is that the school building committee must make a recommendation to the school committee to move forward and submit the stage 2 application that we're working on. And, as I mentioned before, this is a large volume that takes us every bit of now till February 15th to put together, and we submit. We did this once before for you last year, so we're comfortable in doing that. I want you to know what is basically in the application. So this is just a rendering of the building that we had proposed for this particular project. This is the one that we have received cost estimates on, and we'll talk about that as we go through.
And just so everybody knows, this presentation is going to be done for the school committee and for the town council. So if there's feedback, obviously you'd want that.
Definitely.
And then tonight, this body is voting to move to
Can make a recommendation,
Yep. For the
submission.
submission of stage 2.
Yes. So as we talked before, we have, working with RIDE and the School Building Authority, we've come up with a plan for $100 million worth of projects for $30 million locally, not including interest going forward. We are targeting $70 million in state aid with the incentives that we will be maximizing. I thought it was important to remind everyone that Coventry as a community has supported school construction bonds at the state level, both times, once at 64% and once by 68%. I think that should speak to the community's interest in supporting school construction, especially locally. Because of Coventry's support for those statewide bonds, your neighbors have taken advantage of that opportunity. And in November of 2022, all of those school departments have passed school construction bonds, and they range from 50 million all the way up to 350 million. So Coventry has been on the sidelines for a while, and now we have a plan for you to be in the game.
Is it worth pointing out I mean, for places like North Providence, East Providence, this is their second go at it, so they
Uh,
took it.
Absolutely. So, yeah,
Not around the schools.
that's exactly right, right? So North Providence had, I think that was 75 million previously, and they just did another 125 million. And East Providence did almost 200 million,
Yeah, like 189.
189, and now they're going back for another 148, and these were approved by their communities. So
And Westerly, this is their second bite of the apple too, right? Didn't
they have not, they have attempted,
Right,
It was
they
not
have-
so-
no, that's what I mean.
they have been successful this time.
Weren't successful the first time, and now they've moved forward with a different.
Plan, yes. Next. So this is what we're going to talk about, the proposed projects, the approval process, the submission, and then any next steps or questions. So the first major proposed project is the new Coventry Elementary School at 82.2 million. That's consolidating Tyoke, Hopkins Hill, and Black Rock for about 1,000 students. And the proposed site is the middle school property that does align with the original master plan as part of the middle school project. If you recall, at that time, we were at a fork in the road. Coventry's need was great at the elementary schools, and there was an interest in moving the middle school to advancing the teaching and learning there with a major addition. We chose the middle school model at that time, making sure that we had a contingency for a future plan of consolidating elementary schools and making this campus. This is what we're doing now.
If I may, in the presentation made to the school committee and town council, I know it seems like it's looking ahead, too far ahead, but part of a big thing, a big reason for buy-in for this is the immediate surrounding neighborhoods to these schools. That one of the number one questions I'm getting is what's gonna happen to those buildings, so I think we need to, whether it's offline or we talk to some other communities that have done this, because I know Ride's pushing consolidation. What are examples we can talk about when we present of what those buildings and that land could potentially be? Because it's tough for people to picture, and people see like what Oak Haven has become, and they're not a fan. They're like, we don't want a facility yard, a truck yard in my backyard. So we have to really put some thought into that. Even before a capital campaign messaging piece. So if anyone here has thoughts about that or has seen examples of what old school buildings could be or what the land could be, I think we need to really, that's gonna be huge part of the buy-in for the neighborhoods.
I completely agree, because some communities have not done that well. And it becomes a legacy issue that impedes future efforts.
So does this plan include pre-K? Because I see K to 5 and we do have pre-K classes, so where are they going to be?
I don't recall in the drawings if we have a pre-K component. I want to say we do, and maybe that's just an error on our part. I think pre-K right now is here.
Yeah.
Is there pre-K at Tyoke, Hopkins Hill, or Black Rock?
No, but
That's why I put K through 5, but I believe in the drawings that we've developed, we have made pre-K
Yes.
space for future growth.
You did.
yeah,
Okay.
and we need that because the program here is full.
Okay, so
And
yeah,
we need more room.
So-
We need to modify that slide.
we can change this to say PK to 5.
Do you have a printout of this? And I write a modification on it for you, or?
No, I do not, but I'll write that note down as soon as I'm done. So we receive, this is, our third party cost estimator is Alana. And they provided us with a cost estimate on the documents that we've gave them, which is about 135,000 square foot building. There's many pages to their estimate. I only clipped this one part, which starts with $60 million in trade costs. And then they have a number of percentages that increase the cost. However, this is not the project cost yet, right? So we have a project cost of about 82 million. If I take our project costs and put it on top of this, 85 million, it's probably like 90 some million. So I'll be working with Alana to fix a lot of these percentages that are not acceptable to RIDE. For example, 12.5% contingency on a new building is not acceptable. Now, on a new building, that could get into that could certainly be 5, could even be a little less. Escalation at 9.5%, RIDE will not accept that either. So if you look at the 9.5, which is 7 million, and the 12.5, which is another 7.5 million, that's like $15 million on top of their direct trade costs. So those need to be modified, which will change all these numbers, which will then come very close to aligning with our project cost. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we are within striking distance here. I certainly want to open it up to Christine and Alita to comment upon that. I'll certainly send out the estimate to the group because you two may want to see all of it. We're going through it now to see where things may be overestimated or underestimated. But what I want you to know is we're within striking distance. So I think we're going to be okay. Like anything else, upon approval and you're moving forward, you're just going to work to the budget. And you should be very comfortable with the people on your building committee that know how to do that with their design team. Next slide. So this just talks about the consolidation component. Next slide.
I am going to mention that one of the parents or one of the community members who had emailed me said she thought the location wasn't a good location in terms of central to where those schools are. But when I look at this map, I actually wonder if it's better than the Tioga one in the sense of it's nestled right between Black Rock and Tioga. I mean, Hopkins Hill's going to go a little bit further, but
literally to drive from Hopkins Hill to the middle school takes like 5 minutes.
right. So I'm just bringing that up.
I think it's tough for people to conceptualize, and that simple map really does it.
You gotta somehow, I think it's the kids and the busing plan, so kids who walk now they probably gotta get up earlier in the morning, they gotta figure it out, so however the busing works out for that has to like make sense, cause I mean, I live in Western, so yeah, if my kid has to be on for almost an hour to get anywhere, that's where I live, but
Right.
these people shouldn't have to, and I've seen some routes that look funky, so make that better for elementary parents, I think they'd appreciate that.
I think there's going to be a significant amount of change here, not only in terms of bus routing, but maybe even bell schedules. As you start thinking about should the middle school and the elementary school, their staggered times, should that change at all? How that can be made more efficient. So, you will have a couple years to get that all worked out, but there's certainly some efficiencies and changes. I mean, change is difficult for people. But when you are presented with a new school building, the people quickly move beyond that and adapt.
I wonder,
Go ahead.
I wonder, keep that slide as is, right? But then perhaps do a satellite image of, because you know how people now are so used to like the visualization of things, if that would help. Kind of like the same information, but more on a satellite kind of bird's eye view, that would help those parents.
Or even put like the Google Maps results,
Right.
like if you did Google Map from Hopkins Hill to this new site. It's
Oh.
X,
Like
it's
you're not
X
doing it too
minutes and it's
far.
X miles.
Yeah, but I mean, even to your point, even replacing this with that, I have been talking about logistics with people at Rogers, the same plan for like 6 months, and then we put it on a Google map, and everybody's like, oh.
Yeah.
So I know like seeing it in relation really helps.
And I wonder if it would be worth it to pick a time when it's daylight out, maybe that we could go and stand on the land and see where the roads would connect, and because I can't visualize that off the top of my head.
But if you do it like the Google bird's eye view, not per se the whole map, but that's.
Sure, this area, yeah.
If you're looking at it and you put it as, that when you see it, you're like, oh, that now makes sense because they can put themselves in that spot and see kind of like, because when I look for something, that's how I look, oh, okay, and I orient myself. And it becomes clear where. It's just easier, I think.
It's easier further away than it actually is.
Yeah.
If you saw it.
Because when you look at that, exactly. it's like,
From a busing thing, couldn't we just ask if they have all the addresses right now, and we just do middle school?
What do you want? What do you want to do?
Do use the busing company just to sort of map out where all those students would go and see, you know, just ask them if we would, how long it would take them to do that.
I
Because
think, I think it's gonna be more efficient, because it's a lot
I think
tighter.
it is too.
Yeah.
And even this, and this is something you were talking about just a second ago, Phil, about the staggered bell schedule. So Hopkins Hill and Washington Oak are the two quote unquote late schools right now. They're the 9 to 3:30 schools. The other three schools are 8:30 to 3. And so that's that two of those schools go on one schedule, a third goes on the other schedule, but by consolidating this, we might be able to move that up and make it a lot tighter. And put the other two on a different schedule.
Is there any opportunity for like people who have a middle school and an elementary school kid? They got two buses coming at two different times. And their middle school is probably going at like 6:30 in the morning and then the elementary.
Yeah, we have to figure
Is
that
there
out. I think that's sort of Harold's point.
Yeah.
That's right, if we talk to the bus company, they can sort of figure it out for us instead of.
I think though it's, because like we talked about this, like West Warwick does. 6 to grade 12 goes on the same bus because the middle school. has
Sherwood too.
So it's like six to 12th grade, okay, but like, I feel like the gap between, say, a pre-K
And
and
an
an eighth grader is
Gigantic.
huge. I mean,
No.
I don't think we can, yeah, I hear your point though, but
Do you have a slide in here that shows this kind of on the map? I'm just trying to see how it, because that's not. What would be the front of this building is the rear of Feinstein now, right? So I'm just trying to see how it relates as far as, you know, traffic. You have something?
that's what I was just saying. I think we need to like do a walkthrough over there to figure it out.
So let's go to the next slide.
Oh, right. Is it
And
right?
it's,
Wait, it's, you know, we had one from the last one.
So I'll orient yourself. Now, look, this is very preliminary. It was us to get our estimates together. This is the existing middle school right here. This is Guam out
Can
here.
you blow that section up a little bit bigger?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Here we go.
I'm so excited with Zoom.
That's all right.
You go up a little more.
You really want?
I think we're gonna, you might want to go up and down just a little bit, but
Yeah. Oh,
Maybe make it a little smaller.
yeah.
I know.
All right, let's stay right there for now.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Right there. So with the addition of this new elementary school, you can see where we have put the parent drop off, the bus parking, the opportunity for some field reconfiguration and additional parking here. When we look at this building, we need to look at a lot of this site to see how we can improve the site circulation to help make this be a success. Also, the consideration of this extension that we had talked about that brought you through and over to here, emptying you out directly across the street from where that road is. I don't remember the name of this station. So this is where we're thinking the building is, right? It's oriented basically perpendicular to the middle school. This would be the front, and then the fields in the back. But as you can see, now you start to create this really nice campus here. So this does, align with an overall master plan. We're going to see how much of this we can capture within the cost of this project, right? It'll be a balancing act. We don't want to take too much away from the building and put it into the site. However, we know that improving the site will improve the overall operation of the building. So it's going to be a great design challenge to work through.
Dumb question. Why are we on top of the middle school site? It would appear that there's this, unless that's marshy or, I mean, is it just a lot of trees to take down? Like, just curious why we're right on top of the middle school.
So we should go during the day and walk this site. We're thinking back here, there's some, I don't want to call it ledge, right? But there is some rock there, but
I don't wanna
The
call
L
it ledge,
word.
but it's ledge.
but it's ledge. And
Something else.
and if you maybe zoom out, I don't know if this goes, does this drawing go to the entire parcel in the back? So although it's what we're calling it on top of the middle school, if we were going to move forward with a middle school project 10, 15 years from now, the goal of the middle school project was to make this building smaller. It's too big already. So you're taking off Guam, and we were taking off this rear addition and putting an addition that ended up going vertically. So it may feel like you're on top of it, but you're really not. And in the future, you have plenty of room to build what you want to build at the middle school. And keeping things closer, it's really not a bad thing. Now, certainly, like I said, if this moves forward, there will be a lot of in-depth design and engineering discussions about where that building goes. That building won't even be that shape. Likely, it'll look a little different. And maybe it is pushed up a little farther, and maybe the busing is brought down, but all of that relates to the function inside the building too. So certainly there will be a lot of discussions here, and this committee will have that opportunity to opine and participate.
Are those are site improvements down on the south side, page south of the middle school there? Are those changes? That's not how that parking lot stuff looks now.
So that's not how that looks now. We don't know how much of this we can capture in the budget of this project. We will get $100 million worth of approval, and then see what happens and fit it in. We heard RIDE has at times, reduce the amount that they would consider reimbursed for a project. Let's hope that doesn't happen here, because we want as much money as we can get. If someone were to say, well, why are we doing this? What's wrong with the schools that we have, other than that we know that they're all dated facilities, that they don't offer the opportunities for the new teaching and learning that we want to introduce at the elementary school levels. This is just an example of what you have and what you could have. This is from another project, elementary school project that we're working on. The next grouping of projects is work at the Coventry High School at 8.1 million, which includes gym improvements to the floor and bleachers, auditorium improvements that support audio and visual, science lab improvements, which improve the casework, fitness center improvements for the interior finishes, and the fire suppression system enhancements, which are necessary from your regulatory agency. They want it done. So when we look at what you're getting, Narragansett High School renovated their gymnasium. We want yours to be better than that. Same thing with the fitness center. This is in New Bedford. Massachusetts, yours will look better than that. This is just an example of what the science casework should look like when it's renovated. And of course, I'm absolutely confident that your performances at the high school certainly deserve the proper audio and visual technology to support their programs.
And while they're much smaller projects, those are a very active and engaged group of parents and teachers who are part of those drama presentations and I think it's a good group to get on board. They're a part of a very large whole, but that's a big deal. To be redoing that auditorium.
That was sort of our strategy. We laid out a lot of projects and we wanted ones that the community would benefit from, but it also would be visually impactful early on. We talk about Eden Park a lot, but they did a section of that school early to help promote the next bond.
Yeah.
So, you know, this work here is going to start earlier than the school construction that we do. So people will be able to see the impacts pretty early.
And I guess I get, maybe it was just in my mind, I was thinking we've got to get these elementary school parents, but you know, redoing things like the high school gym.
Well, this is important because, like I said at the last meeting, a lot of parents are doing the math in their head and thinking, well, by the time this new school is done, my kid's not gonna be in elementary school anymore. And so I think you have to make the sell of the Coventry Public Schools journey. So I think that's why this is just as important. And maybe a few people like sports in this town too, so.
And again, most of the high school work is a result of the grant that you pursued with RIDE. So
Right.
congratulations on that. Not everyone got everything that they wanted. And I think you guys fared pretty well.
I would say throwing grants into this mix is always a good idea too. People love to hear that grants were put in for and received.
And we have two other grants that once all this kind of comes together, I'm gonna look to try to parlay into these projects. So one is a furniture grant. Equipment and furniture. Part of it is specifically for CTE, which will benefit the high school. But the rest of it, we can use maybe to improve science labs if we run out of money for furniture, or to put more into the auditorium. And then the other one,
Seats suck.
right, well, and the other thing is that we also have that arts grant, which is $140,000 that can go towards the auditorium as well. So I haven't put those towards anything just yet, because I want to see how much we can kind of parlay off of this with those grants together, because the more we can get, the better.
And I believe RIDE introduced another grant yesterday, the outdoor classroom grant.
I was actually going to talk to Mario about that today, because my understanding is it's similar to this grant where it goes through the SBA and there's a calculation for your reimbursement. And that's my understanding. I think they're looking to give out $7.1 million to 70 schools. But yeah, it's an outdoor learning space grant. I just saw it yesterday.
We won't be able to throw that in. I'm just thinking of that courtyard that's at the middle school. They're gonna be doing all this work on that campus, and there was some type of an outdoor grant. It'd be great to take advantage of that and do something with that area.
Yeah. That's a good point, because the middle school project's relatively infrastructure related with the roofs. The next group is Western Elementary, about 3.8 million for high impact visual enhancements, focusing on the cafeteria, media center, and of course, addressing the domestic water distribution issue. And I think we gave a couple images, just because these spaces are small does not mean that we can't have a big impact. Paint and finishes and furniture can improve that space in the cafeteria, certainly in the media center and library on the next slide. There's a lot of little things that you can do that really change the quality of the space. At Washington Oak, 2.5 million in facility improvements for high impact visual enhancements and deferred maintenance. So we want to make sure that we maintain this asset. Your newer school, however, it is 20 some years old. So there are some improvements here that can help Russ stay ahead of the game.
Do you
And-
know some of the specifics you plan on doing?
The
Or-
HVAC is all gonna be upgraded, 20 years old, it's tough to even get parts for some of the stuff now. The rooftop units and stuff,
Yeah.
you can't find this stuff, nobody will even work on it.
Can I ask what's going on right there on the doors? Cause I feel like that used to be windows.
Is that?
It is windows. What that is I guess they had somebody in here today and it's like a little curtain. It's not wood. It looks like wood, but it's not.
I was like, maybe fix that.
Not one of those.
Like going up, doesn't it?
No, it's like.
Really rustic.
An easy way to think about this is the intent is for public buildings to last 50 years. But everything, all of the expensive stuff, mechanical systems, roofs, windows, they only last 25 years. So in the life of any public institution, there will be a major improvement sometime within that lifespan. And we want to stay ahead of it so that you can manage it and it doesn't become a crisis. At the middle school, $3.4 million for building envelope improvements like the roof. And Alita, you're absolutely right. No one's really going to know you spent $3 million on the roof at the middle school.
Kids who sit under the leaves. might know.
Yeah, they'll know, but you won't see it. So, exploring that outdoor learning classroom grant and maybe putting it in at the middle school, that's probably a really good idea.
And if you could say, like. Repaving or something to that effect, if we find a way to speak it in, or that's something that we won't know until way down the line.
Yeah, I don't think we'll want to say that here, just because I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But we do know there's going to be some connection there. Next slide. So the summary of how we've arrived at $100 million worth of projects. 82.2 for the new elementary school, 8.1 for Coventry High School, 3.8 for Western, 2.5 for Washington Oak, and 3.4 for the middle school, totaling 100. Next slide. So if we want to look at it from the financials in terms of expenditures and revenue, we're going to be making a submission to RIDE for $100 million for projects. The funding is an $80 million bond. Then we have the grant. Then we have pay-go. Then we have the adjustment, which they call equity adjustment to pay-go, which is the school building authority giving you an additional $8 million up front. With these projects come some grant bonuses that we will pursue. And then I have the property sales where we only identified 800,000. The next slide is, I think, where I captured some of the appraisal information. So within that $100 million revenue block, I had 800,000 in bonuses and in land sales. And at least the market value from those reports for Hopkinton Hill and Tioga is about 1.5, 1.6 million. They're both about the same size, 10 acres. Black Rock is forthcoming, but Black Rock is 27 acres. Now, don't make a direct interpolation here, but Black Rock is larger than Hopkins Hill and Tioga.
Can I just ask, because I don't know, how are schools zoned? Like,
It's a complicated answer. So for the most part, by the neighborhoods closest to the school. But there was, before my time, some reconfiguration of redistricting done when Washington Oak came online.
No,
not that.
No,
Like,
I mean,
commercial, residential.
Educational buildings. Schools can go into residential neighborhoods.
but my bigger fear is when they're not schools anymore. I don't want
Yes.
to have them zoned commercial and let
No.
some trucking company.
Yes,
Yeah, no, I expect this to all be residential zoned.
Well, that's my
Well, I
question.
don't quite necessarily want it residential.
There we are. They're R20. Both Hopkins Hill and Tioga are R20, so they're half acre lots.
that are in there, and then with cluster, you can put a lot more. My question is, I noticed there's 975 projected students going in from those 3 schools that we're looking at.
Right.
What's the capacity of that building, the new building? 1,000?
A little over
A little over 1,000.
Like
So if
1065.
if these units become residential again, and they're in highly desirable residential zones, these things can be turned into house lots. Now you're adding, what, 2.3 children per lot? You're probably talking 70, 80 different lots on these 3 sites. How is that gonna impact that school? Are we gonna have a capacity in that school to handle that influx, or are you gonna have to start redistricting again and shifting? And by the looks of it, you've already got 600 here. I'm assuming that's pretty much capacity of this building. So like I said, my worry is we turn those 40 acres, 50 acres into residential zone, and that could add a ton of new students into the system.
Yeah, but
But wouldn't they move, wouldn't they be transitioning along the years that all that is doing towards?
I'm just saying, you're still gonna add all of that potential.
That's assuming that every one of those kids is elementary age that moves in at the same time.
right. But we're also losing.
He's right, that we'll have more homes.
We'll have more homes, but we're also losing population, so this would possibly level it out.
Well, to think, let's just take what he said though and extrapolate upon it. We have a very elderly population right now, and at some point, these people will sell their homes.
Right.
To younger people as well. So some of our existing home populations might become younger at the same
Isn't that
time.
why we did projections, looking out 10 years, so we could plan for this? I mean,
Yeah, sure, and RIDE will only accept up to 5 years in those projections, and that is where they will cap. So, Ed, you make a very good point, and RIDE really doesn't have a response to that, other than say, plan for the future.
We've got in the other aspect that was just brought up about the elderly, we've got about 26% of our property, residential property right now is frozen, which means it's 65 and older. So there's a good percentage of that may come back into the younger families and again, additional children. So that's why I'm asking is the capacity in that school to handle if we bring it up, if it goes up?
Well,
We will maximize what we can in terms of capacity. RIDE will only allow it to go so far. But I bet Alita and Christine can probably speak to this as well. We're going to want to make the biggest building that we can afford. And that's that. And if you find an influx of students 5, 7, 10 years from now, then that's another issue that Coventry will have to address.
We hope your bond capacity will go up by then. I mean, because you have more taxes coming in, right?
no, that's a common misconception. More residential homes is a burden on the tax base. It's not, it doesn't help.
you can't really lift much.
Nope.
I would say though, for bonding capacity, don't they do it by the estimate of the properties as opposed to what we can actually get in taxes from them?
The indebtedness all comes into play. There's a lot of factors that come into play on what your bonding capacity ultimately ends up and what you have left available.
The only impact you could have, it would be gradual, is if some of those folks who are frozen move out and those houses go to people who are not frozen, because then they are sharing.
Not everyone frozen is paying less.
What's that?
So not everyone who's frozen is paying less. It's like you're
You could also make the argument in the opposite direction too, because a chart we looked at just last year for enrollment showed it's slowly going down.
well, and if it's
So-
anything like the other developments they're trying to put in. A lot of them will be 2-bedroom,
Mhm.
and in making 2-bedroom homes, you don't have to be factored into the school.
The stackable townhomes, that's what we're seeing being put in on the eastern side of town because land is at a premium. And then they're coming to planning and chopping those half-acre lots even smaller and to put single families right on top of each other, so. But you're right, we're seeing more of those kind of units.
So that's why you keep moving, right? You do this plan, you sit there, you work with the info you have, you build as big as you can, you have your projections out the next 5 years,
Yep.
and then you start thinking, where's the addition going?
Yes.
It's kind of
Yeah.
a cycle, you're constantly,
Otherwise, you're not getting anywhere.
yeah.
You're always thinking about.
Or
that.
or you have to redistrict, you might,
Yeah.
you might find that there's less kids of elementary school age closer to Washington Oak, and so you might have to, move, I mean.
We have a lot of options.
Yeah, we can't crystal ball it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want paralysis by analysis. We have a good plan. You've come up with a good approach and it's very impactful to Coventry. So. We talked about some of the savings that we may recognize from closing 3 schools, from operations regarding utilities, transportation, maintenance.
Yeah, I would be as specific as possible in that. I mean, my guess is the town council will have questions of like, where do you expect to see that operational savings? So if you can throw some specifics, I think that would be good.
Don, were you able to speak with or have that presentation to faculty at?
No,
Okay.
unfortunately, I've been so jammed up the last week and a half. I haven't been able to do that or really do a whole lot with marketing.
I
So that's
worry,
why
I'm seeing some misinformation now about what the impacts will be on staff. And so we need to get out ahead of
Yeah,
that, really,
I agree.
especially before the 24th and the 26th.
Yep.
Or at least have information in this presentation about that.
Agreed.
Next slide. So we're looking at a approximate debt service payment of about 1.8 million per year. And for context only, because this is not how it always works, but the amount per household per month is 1099. Which I made a cute joke about that being the same amount as my Planet Fitness membership,
I was wondering.
which is 1099, which I will not be using probably in 3 months, but I will continue to pay for it for years because it's on my credit card and who knows, right? So anyway, this is a generational opportunity that we think is within reach.
What is that all about? You kidding me?
When we're marketing this to residents, I don't know how important it is during this presentation. But making sure people understand that while this 1099 will be baked in, they'll never see an increase based on this bond, other than that one time.
Sure, and that's what this slide hopefully represents, right? $80 million school construction bond, the number of years of the bond, if this is a 20-year bond, that 1099, again, for context only, will ramp up and then stay constant for the life of that bond.
But it almost looks like you're paying another 1099 each year, so.
Would you rather me not have the dots on it? Is that what you're talking about? That's fine. I mean, I'm not an accountant, so if you think this could be better.
Yeah,
I'll-
there might be a better way.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make the graph.
I'm open. If you have any
I don't know what
ideas,
the answer is, but.
scribble it down.
I'd probably do like currently now, right? We pay initially so much and then from this year to this year, right? Instead of a graph, just say staying at 1099. I don't know,
Well,
simplifying it would be.
But even then,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's right.
I'm just.
Well,
saying it's
basically,
like-
a resident's principal and interest payment on this school is 1099 a month for the next 20 years.
Exactly.
To like equate it to a mortgage. So you're getting an $80 million bond for $11 a month. Over 20 years.
No PMI.
No PMI. That's with- But in this, I guess I'm just saying equate it to your mortgage, how you got it, and now it's the same forever.
Okay,
Or maybe a car payment for people that's.
oh, with the next slide, this is another thing I keep seeing in conversation, we need to list all the other districts that have consolidated their elementaries, because there's some misinformation of like that, we're doing this, just to save the buck, and we don't care about our neighborhood schools, and this is some novel concept we've come up with, and we have to share that the state Department of Education is nudging districts.
Yeah, particularly since they have even instituted a bonus incentive
Yes.
for newer and fewer,
So I
so.
think we need to, list all the districts that have consolidated and, we're not inventing the wheel here. This is to get the town the max.
You could theoretically, but if we don't consolidate, we get all the different ones, but if you don't consolidate, you lose X. In funding.
And let's make clear, and I know you have it on this slide, but with the woman who reached out from Hopkins Hill, she was like, why wouldn't we just spend $17 million and fix them? And making clear that $17 million does not fix these schools.
Correct, this simply addresses building components that keep them either warm, safe, or dry. It has no programmatic enhancements. Those images that we showed you previously.
Well, but specifically to those schools, when I reached out, I said, you'll still be walking into an outbuilding to have library class.
Yes.
You'll still won't have space for your.
There's no.
Next slide, Don, let me see it. And I touch on that right here. Investing in buildings over 60 years old, you still have 6 lunch seatings because the cafeterias are small. You still have art on a cart. You still have a library in a trailer.
Yeah, I think the one thing I will say is that until I was on this committee, I would have had no idea what you were talking about when you said 6 lunch seatings.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what that means. I wouldn't have known. So maybe making it clear, like, kids will,
We'll be eating lunch from 10 in the morning till
From,
2 in the
yeah,
night.
gotcha.
like,
Yeah,
really put it in
Just
terms like
saying
that.
that like 10, like your kids are eating lunch at 10 a.m. Because
To
we have
2 p.m.
right,
Or
so somewhere in there.
I also
Right.
wonder, are the enhancements to Western supposed to help that lunch seating?
No,
They
No,
won't help it,
no.
right? I didn't
it
think so.
doesn't make the room any bigger.
Right.
no. The other thing too is you deal in these numbers all day, Alita, Christine. 17 million is a lot of money to the average person. You might think, how is 17 million? How is that not stretching to cover 3? So I don't know if there's a way we can demonstrate how fast that money is gone in terms of what it costs to make these.
Maybe some
renovations.
examples, some typical examples
Like,
of
yeah.
like HVAC projects for a school this size. $5
and then
million.
show How fast that money disappears and you only touched one school or something, or I don't know,
Yeah,
something.
okay,
one of
okay.
those.
Instead of Target, we should mention Love It or List It. If anyone's ever seen that shit, people want all this stuff done to their house, and it's like, okay, let's go, and then it's like, oh, your electric's bad. Now we're just gonna give you a free tablecloth.
Hillary's always got the bad news.
You'll watch too much TV.
I think it's to watch that show.
We've got some committees in town, if you have time.
I've got nothing but time,
How much does 3 schools cost? How much does 3 schools cost if you wanted to replace each school individually?
Oh, that's a good point.
All right,
We look
so,
at 50 million schools.
well, interestingly enough, North Providence is building 3 small elementary schools to replace their 3 small elementary schools. They can't consolidate because they have absolutely no land except the land that is immediately adjacent to their school. So for that community, they are building 3 new elementary schools. And estimates for that have come in at about $35 million a school. So 35 times 3, what is that? 105 million.
And no reimbursements, probably.
Fewer.
They're not.
Well,
as
fewer
many.
reimbursements
Fewer.
because they don't get. So, so they're getting 3 schools for 105 million. We're trying to give you 1 school for 85 million.
That's a perfect slide right there.
Well, 1 school and enhancements to other schools.
Well, yeah, no, I was just saying, if I don't, yes, right, you're,
1 school plus for less than what they're gonna do for keeping the 3 neighborhood schools.
yes.
And where, to some parents, it could matter, we're not going to affect their school year while this school is being built either. These other 3 schools are gonna be functioning as is, and then, when September rolls around the next time, they're going to a brand new school. We get a lot of complaints with construction going on while we're actively have classes in session, so.
we might want to talk to some people who maybe at the time, like, were the head of Wood Estates Residents Association or something 20 years ago, because they dropped their neighborhood school like a bad habit. They were like, we don't want to go to this school anymore, we want to go to that school, that's brand new. And
What was their neighborhood school?
I don't even think they had one, they,
Tyo.
it was, I think they went to Tyo, why they didn't go to
That doesn't
Hopkins
make any
Hill,
sense.
it's beyond me. But we didn't care that we sent our kids to school for years together and it was lovely. We went to the new school. And I think a lot of parents who don't live directly in walking distance of Hopkins Hill, Tioga and Black Rock, they're gonna wanna go to a new school.
That's my thing is we don't have a true temperature on how loud the voice is of my neighborhood school versus I'd love to put my kid in a brand new school.
Yeah, I
And
don't
we don't have an accurate temperature on that. so. All right.
All right, next slide.
We can see more what these schools look like.
So the approval process, there are 3 approvals. Ride approval is the stage 2 submission. Legislative approval, which is the enabling legislation, which town council moves forward a resolution, and then, of course, eventually your vote, your public voter approval, which right now we anticipate in May.
And I know that the legislation in the House side was drafted this week.
Good.
So that's gonna start. I don't know. I have to touch base on the Senate side, but I know House is moving.
How solid are you on that May date? Because the Board of Canvassers is asking about that. They know one's coming up. They need to prep a couple of months in advance, so we need to give them a heads up as soon as we
We
can
need
on
the
that.
ballot approved in mid-March based on the timeline of how they work. But you're right. And we keep saying the 10th, it's a Title 17, it has to be on Tuesday. We cannot do, and because it's a Title 17, I think we can open up just the sites we do for primary, but we have to check on that because our budget referendum vote is not a Title 17. So that's where we're allowed to only open 1 poll per district. But I think we're gonna have to, so that's why I was mentioning about the PD day for polling locations.
Probably a benefit, right? I think we can get, like, if we get the yeses to come out, I think it's a benefit to have it as regular as it can be for people. I vote on my way home because I vote at the church. If I have to go somewhere else, I usually don't vote because I gotta, do everything, grab the kids, the life. So when I vote there, I vote. And when it's like, no, you gotta go down here and around this road, I'm like, yeah.
The other thing too is, because it's Title 17, mail ballots, early voting, that's all in play. Something else, sort of thing. Not to go down that.
No, that's fine. We should talk about this. Is there any to-dos that we want to put on somebody's radar screen?
We should really consider the date. I think we need to have a conversation with Lori. I don't mind giving her a call. And just check and date, because there is a certain amount of, I think it's like 60 or 90 days they need lead time, so.
And that'll be important for any communications we have to the public about where and when to vote. When we develop flyers and materials, so.
It has to be Tuesday.
Title 17s have to be on a Tuesday.
And then we just
So
wanna
the
make sure it's
30th,
not the Tuesday.
30th is Tuesday. So you do it.
No, because you have the Board of Education voting that same month. You have to get this in before that, right?
No,
Oh, I thought that we have to.
no, in any order you can do your bond vote. For example,
No, I mean, like,
Memorial Day's the 29th anyway, though. so
I thought
wouldn't
the
do
council
30th.
on,
that's the ride approval that you'll get. That's the one that you need, but you could get that at any time. For example, North Providence already had their bond vote and I haven't even submitted their stage 2 yet.
okay,
So
all right.
any order,
I feel like,
but I don't think May 30th would be a good day.
no, I feel like Murray.
Not if it's Memorial Day on the
I was
29th.
just saying, he thinks it has to be the second Tuesday of the month. It's the
Yes.
Same as, so if it's the second Tuesday, then it has to be the next, there's no question about it. And then I would wonder, how early do we have to allow for early voting? And we don't need to know tonight, I'm just saying it's something to make sure we know, so that we have advertising and polling, because
on the schedule.
it's a pain in my butt to go on Tuesday but I'll go Friday before because my kids have to.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at, Saturday.
I think that early voting is the most brilliant thing that's ever happened to voting.
Anyway,
So
um,
these are discussions that we should have with someone who can help guide that. I know when I've done this previously. There is somebody, I don't know who the man or woman is behind the curtain, but they come out with all these dates. And say, here are the dates, early voting by this, mail-in voting
and
by
they
this.
create a schedule.
Yeah, register to vote, you gotta register to vote by this day if you wanna vote in this. So,
That's something we probably have to assume.
Yeah, because 90 days is February.
I think it's like 60 days. I don't think it,
Because
because
60 days, then you're looking at March.
ballot language has to be approved by the second week of March by the council.
and high school students on their, that are eligible to vote. Should exercise that right. I'm just curious, as we're talking about it, it's on a Tuesday. What happens to schools on May 9th? Like, I imagine schools are a polling place, right?
They can if they're open,
Yeah, so.
They can or can't?
can't.
They can't. So do you want schools to be a polling place on May 9th? I don't know.
That's what we talked about at our last meeting, because there's a PD day on the 10th, which is why it was suggested, but you can't have it on a Wednesday. So there was talk about moving the PD day to Tuesday, but
I'd be switching, so it's two pieces. It's not impossible, but there's two moves. So the PD day in March is a full PD day. Kids are home doing asynchronous learning that day. The PD day in May is an early release day. So I'd switch the day to the Tuesday, but then I have to switch that Tuesday for the one in March. So that the one in May would be a full day. So staff could come in and do their thing, but there would be no students.
We can't possibly be the first town that's running into this problem if it has to be on a Tuesday. So, I mean, every town typically has some of their polling locations at a school. Maybe Mario knows.
so on a full polling day, I know that Tyoke is used. High school is used, Hopkins Hill and Hopkins Hill is a polling location? And Western Coventry, so there's 4 right there.
No, I don't think Western.
Western is, yeah, it is. It was just used in November.
We've also seen where they run into with certain months, they will not do an election. They will not do a vote.
What?
There are certain
The board of canvassers?
board of canvassers, the state. I'm gonna talk to Lori tomorrow and we'll call the state tomorrow. And we'll just confirm that May 9th is even a doable date with them, that they would allow for that date. And then we'll get the time frame working back. That way we can find out ASAP and make sure, because if it's gonna get changed. Obviously, you need to do it right away, so.
Mhm.
We'll call tomorrow and confirm that this is a doable voting date for a Title 17 vote.
Let's hope it is, because it has to be that day. It has to be that, yeah, it has to be that.
And I'm,
Tuesday.
and just to keep poking you, at what point would you need to know whether you change these PD days?
I have to do it at the school committee meeting, right? I bring the calendar to the school committee meeting and they have to give them an explanation. And then they would vote to make the change, but I'd also want to talk to Kelly and the CTA leadership, just to let them know. Sooner than later, just because there's a lot of planning that goes into a PD day, so if one's a half day versus a whole day. It impacts the planning that goes with that. So, like, I know Amy's not here, that's something Amy would
All right,
want to know sooner than later. So if we're gonna use schools as polling places, if that's like a non-negotiable, then I need to move on that.
Because if we're required by state law to open the full complement of polling locations, then we have to use schools.
so it sounds like Ed will have first contact. And he may come back and say, May 9th is doable. These are the dates, and by the way, you do have to have your full complement.
If it's just the
Voting.
primary level number of polling locations, then we'll be fine. I don't think they use schools for that.
No.
Just primary day, people don't get off.
Different topic. On the last slide, we were talking about. What it costs to do nothing, and somebody ended up asking questions about. how much does it cost be to build one elementary school and what it looks like. It got me thinking, should we have somewhere in this presentation, a slide that shows some new construction that's been done in other communities, so people can just see what a nice elementary school looks like? Because I was thinking about somebody's comment, I don't know if it was Kim or somebody else, who basically, if you go to a particular school, you don't know what other schools look like. And so there are people who go to school in different parts of town who have no idea what Washington Oak looks like. And we had a meeting here years ago where we invited people from the community, and they came in, and people from other schools, and they were shocked because it's so different from their experience. So when we're talking about a new school, it's good to have a rendering of what that school could look like, but I almost wonder if it's worth at some point along the way, showing people what new schools look like, if you want to buy a new house, you want to see what the designs look like, and that might excite some people.
But that would be part of your marketing campaign.
Mhm.
Well, I was just gonna say, so if we're gonna make all these specific improvements to the presentation. Based on the assumption that parents are showing up to this town council meeting, we need to have a strategy to put parents in the room.
Mhm. Agreed.
I think maybe another good slide to sneak in, maybe do a comparison where you say, I mean, even if it's you use North Providence, you don't have to say their name, right? But each Brindley Middle School, just do the math. on it,
Yeah.
And the math on our bonding capacity and what we're facing, and they can see it easily. We can't give you 3 new schools, we can give you Band-Aids, but you can get like just a slide that shows the numbers, right?
Yep. Definitely. All right,
Oh, hold on, but Don, is there a way that you can have? I assume all the schools, the principal does like an e-newsletter to parents, can we get a slot in there? I don't know if you want to pump up the 26th school committee meeting or the 24th town council meeting, but it's your call.
I mean, I can,
Or give it as both options.
plus I have access to everybody's email, so I can send the presentations out to the whole school community if I wanted to, or just send out the information about the meeting. I don't even have to rely on the principals to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody reads your emails.
Well, I'll have to. Listen, the fewer principals, fewer emails I send, the better.
No, I read them, but
You know.
But I think, yeah, and we should not wait until like that Monday night
Yeah.
before, like if we can get it out even the Wednesday or Thursday before that. Or sooner.
A couple months.
Yeah.
then do it as well as your overall announcement.
Put an excitement spin on it,
Mhm.
not just, basic information.
What I will say is, as a parent. I don't wanna have to click 2 links to get to something, like if you can just attach it to the email, so I don't have to go digging for it. I need it right there, because even like the Washington Oak. Newsletter, like I have to click the link to bring me the s'more thing, and sometimes I just. If I open an email and all the information's right there, I'll read it. If I have to start clicking links, sometimes I just don't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll also say, let's make it clear, please come and hear about our project.
Mhm.
Not please come and give us ideas about what you would like the project to be, because that ship is sailed. And if people come in and are like. We want this or that, it's like, oh, well, thanks for coming, but. That's not what tonight is about. So just to make clear, we are putting forth the project that we plan on putting before the voters. Come and hear about it. And learn more. Because I would hate it if I went thinking that you were looking for my ideas and then.
no, and there's a lot of drawings and renderings. That was done to do this, identify the project, the cost, and the schedule. On a successful bond vote, I can guarantee you that the drawings that we've developed so far really are just for reference. This building will be different for a variety of reasons. A site constraint that we may find, a budget constraint we may have. That is a time for some active community engagement, because we have that opportunity to hear from them as we are actually designing the building that you all voted for to move forward. Albeit we're not designing 3 small schools, it's going to be 1 consolidated elementary school, but the opportunity for participation at the fun part is is wide open. So right up until we get the first SD estimate and, then it becomes less fun, but that's. So the process that we're going through is the same what we did before. We're putting together our submission package. It's due February 15th. It requires a school building committee recommendation to move it to the school committee to approve to submit, and then the town council approves to submit the project. Next slide. So these are a number of things that we've completed, the drawings, the enrollment projections, the projects, the cost estimating. We've identified the incentives now. So because we have Hopkins Hill at over 65%, and we're harvesting any data that we can from the previous submission, because it was accepted and put together very well. So anything we can carry over, we are. Our documentation's ongoing, the estimates is complete. I want to check that we just talked about this. So we're going to present the stage 2 to town council on January 24th. We're going to present to the school committee
26.
on the 26th. Then right now I'm just having this placeholder.
Are you voting on the 26th or you?
We're voting on a different meeting. So the presentation's one meeting.
Because you guys then have the 9th after that, so I assume you'll vote then.
Mhm.
So I was working on getting poll availability for council. And the problem is the 9th is mistake that week. So the 7th is a remote possibility to get everybody. I have to double back, but I may have to dip back into that pond and see if that Monday, the 13th would be a possibility too, but. So
I can do the 7th.
yeah, there's one person who said they could, if possible, they'd like not to have to, but could make it work if it was last resort.
So, and I can promise you, we will be ready to submit on the 15th, even if town council approval is on the 13th. Because really, the only thing I need from town council is going to be a letter that says we support submitting this, that we will have drafted already. And for example, at Portsmouth, it was a very close date. They had the meeting. After the meeting, I went up, the town manager and for them, that's who signed it. And I scanned it into the PDF and that was the end of it. So if you're worried about weather, I can tell you that on the 15th, I will hit submit whether I have everything or not. And then RIDE will come back to me and say, in my supplemental request, please provide town council approval, which technically I have to do anyway, because they want the meeting minutes from those meetings, and those meeting minutes usually don't come for several weeks out. So I will be submitting on the 15th, and we can follow up as necessary. So, and I'm ready to present whenever you want. So just let me know. It's all good.
Can I just ask, as we look to promote this project? And Don, you can tell me if this is even true, but like 20 years ago, money was put into this school. I'm guessing a school like this attracts a certain level of teacher. They want to teach at the newer school. Well, Washington Oak was a 5-star school this year. One of very few in the entire state. Having a building that teachers want to teach at can help with that. You know, having a learning environment where students can only have to focus on learning. Like, instead of all those little stupid details of there's a leak in the ceiling in my classroom, or we all have to put our coats on to go to the library, to go, you know. So I think there's something to be said for the learning environment.
I think people choose schools for lots of reasons. I think some people would choose a school if it was a new school with a nice, variety of, plugs and outlets that worked and nice, doors and windows and all the things that they don't have.
It's outlets,
Yeah.
all the standard things.
Just basic, the bar is low.
Drinking there.
Other people choose schools based on the time that they start. Some people choose schools based on what part of town it's in, because of their commute,
With their parents.
where their, or where their kids go to school, so, yeah.
Like,
But that's what I'm
where
saying,
they'd like to
they
teach.
pick their locations for a variety of reasons. But I can see a nice new school being desirable. But what's gonna come with that, which is going to take a lot of work on our end, is also doing the PD around what the learning model looks like in a learning environment like this, because it's gonna look different than how some teachers teach now. And some people are gonna love that and embrace it and move forward with that. Some people might be resistant to that. So there's a lot of work that has to happen beforehand, but I don't think having a nice new space is a bad thing.
I think we have to remember too, as Phil's hinted at this, is. It's almost like we're trying to say we have everything down to a T of what it's gonna be. Even before the vote, and that's just not gonna happen. So we're gonna have to keep things at a high level in terms of, what we're offering or what we're moving towards, because. Like we said, we're not gonna know for months what these classrooms are gonna be laid out as. We don't know. We're not gonna know before this.
And there's so many milestones, right? We have to do so many things to get to the next thing, right? So, I mean, we have to get the stage 2 voted on and submitted. We have to then have the town council approve going to a bond. Like, there's so many hurdles that we have to clear before I mean, we don't have to do things in a linear way where it's one right after another. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. But I guess I try to keep in the rearview mirror, like, what's the next thing I have to do? So that I can get past that to.
Don't look too
It's
far.
the vote. We
Yeah,
gotta look toward the vote though, because it's a very short period of time, especially if you have to open up to early voting and stuff. There has to be. Without a full-on campaign going
Mhm.
yet, and that together, there has to be a way to start this message so people don't start hearing it.
Yeah.
I think what might be huge to find a way to craft the message is you gotta make sure, I think, parents understand how it's gonna be set up, kind of like my fear for like my kids, like the big school for the middle school, I thought was a lot for my son, like just the environment with all those kids and those people, it's not for him. So that's a couple of the things that I saw, people are like, that's all these kids in one school, they need to kind of understand, like you were saying, how the teaching model, so without maybe too much detail, specific classroom setup or anything like that, but that it's by pods and groups and, kind of similar maybe to the middle school is set up, how they try to make it smaller. I think the elementary school, they need to know some of that stuff.
One of the ways that we've done that on big schools to start is that it's always presented as there's a lower elementary and an upper elementary. Right? That's where you start. And then even within the lower elementary and upper elementary, there's grade level houses. So you can break it, it's easy for me to say because I've seen it and done it, but you could break a large elementary school down very easily. And you want to break it down for the students and for the staff, and many schools have done that at this size. And change is difficult, right? So you've been used to small elementary schools.
It happens here already. We have kids who are siblings who come to the school who are in different pods, other than riding the bus together. They may not see each other all day long until the end of the day because they have their classroom in a different pod, their lunch is different, their recess is different, their itinerant is different. They're only in the hallway when it's their time to move. So they don't see each other all day long. That happens right now in this building.
Yeah, but the other 3 buildings don't, and they don't understand it.
Right.
So maybe it's a
they're all
parent
in on
from
the
here that helps them to, just when we just start talking about organizing some
Yep.
data and facts and stuff and trying to make people comfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
It's people's kids. We're not talking about like your dry cleaning, like they want to
Yep.
be.
I think the reason why I brought up this school doing it already is because it's not like an abstract concept, like we're doing it. It just doesn't happen where you are right now, like it's successful.
And this is 600 students.
Yeah, at one point it was over 700.
Yeah, so,
That's the key. Yeah.
all right, next, I think the next slide is the last slide. Next steps is for a motion to recommend submission of RIDE Stage 2 to the school committee for approval. Continue with our engagement strategy, begin communicating these projects to the voters and crafting this message. We're certainly going to be helping you with any graphics and stuff like that we need going forward. But because of, as Alita mentioned, the short time frame, we probably ought to get on some of this sooner rather than later.
I don't think it's as bad of a thing as you think either, because when you think about even just regular elections, when do you start paying attention as a layperson? I think to assume that everybody pays attention to an election cycle from declaration of candidacy all the way until, in June, all the way to November is unrealistic, I think. I'm just trying to see the glass is half full here.
Yeah, no, I
It's
completely
not a
agree.
marathon, it's all,
My mind is that the no's are already catching wind and doing what they do behind the scenes. So it's just catching up the people who might say yes if they hear a different message first.
But
Not so much.
and then in the converse, we had more time, the no has more time.
My biggest concern is honestly, I think the teachers part of things and the people whose jobs are directly impacted by these changes and not wanting folks to hear secondhand or via the news or at the school committee meeting that this is happening. I think that's, I mean, just knowing how vocal the teachers in this community are. And they've been generally strong supporters of the school. I think.
Could it be discussed like the PD day? Is it by school, the PD days? Should they get a preview of, understanding
about
like
that at our
their
last
jobs
meeting.
are
I was
safe
gonna
and
say
that kind of
that's
stuff?
Yeah, it's,
strategy for last meeting.
I mean, I think anything's possible. I mean, I guess it depends on if we have to switch our March day with our May day, because when we do a half day PD, the schedule is much tighter and the day is pretty much individualized for different people, different grade levels, different content. It's not everybody together, but I think we can do it. I just didn't get to do it this last week because I was swamped,
I
but
think bringing information to the teachers is the critical thing at this point.
Mhm.
And then from there, they can cascade and build excitement based on.
Yeah.
That presentation.
And
Yeah,
your
really do.
principals at those three schools, are they like all on board? I'm assuming you've talked to them. but-
yeah, I think right now everything's been preliminary and I'm just gonna say it, not to be mean, but I think they've been down this road before, they've heard this before, so nobody's getting like too worked up because we went, kind of a long way and then stopped. And so I think people are listening, I think they're excited, but I think they're kind of waiting to see
Apprehensive.
what happens next.
But this time is a little bit, different where we have that.
It's definitely
70%,
different.
70 million.
I think it's definitely different. I just think maybe their perspective may not.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I don't feel like their message is gonna more so, it's gonna be as involved around the pricing.
No,
In the savings, the message that the principals need to receive, and again, I think that the faculty and the parents trust their principals, so I feel like you gotta get there and have them be part of the yes and get it up to their communities, and I don't think money might be.
No, yeah, I hate to be cynical, but there's a huge. I'd argue almost the majority of this town that's not gonna care what the inside of this building looks like. Or what the learning experience is with the curriculum. It's dollars and cents.
Yeah, and there's
They
two different
won't-
audiences.
They're only gonna care about if, if this saves the town money, this, whatever, they're gonna care about money. That's it.
Yeah, that's when you, two different messages,
Yep.
two different audiences.
and a large percentage of our employees are residents. Can I stop sharing? Are we good here?
Yes, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
I have a question based on something I saw up there that dragged me. It just said new Coventry Elementary School. I'm thinking of names? Is that? gonna be
No,
something
that's just what
thrown out?
I've been carrying.
Just-
New
so
Coventry
it's not gonna
Elementary.
be the- Okay, so that's opportunity for engagement.
$1 million will get you a name.
Yeah, I hear that. I like that. Oh, then like there's three different mascots, right?
Fix the middle school.
Mascot.
Can you combine like Charahoe,
Mhm.
Chayo Hop Rock?
Yeah.
Keep working.
Tyo Grot Hill School.
All right, any further questions or discussion on the presentation? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7. SB, I assume C vote
Yes,
to approve stage 2 application. To open up discussion, do I hear a motion to approve the stage 2 application?
Emotion.
Motion, do we have a second?
A second.
Second. Discussion?
all we can do.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Any final words anyone would like to say? I don't know if any members of the public are watching,
I
Okay,
think through 2 rounds of this, we've landed on the opportunity that utilizes all of our incentives, touches as many residents as possible. Is looking to find ways to continue this maintenance, both in the new school and schools that aren't consolidating. I think we've come up with the best project possible for this current incentive period.
anything else? Hearing none, I'll go to a roll call vote. Kristen Danusis,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Anna Dosray Scutu,
Yes,
Alita Hall,
Yes.
Christine Kennedy,
Yes.
James Pearson,
Yes.
Kim Shockley,
Yes.
Hillary Lima, yes. 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the motion carries. Don, I take it you'll remit notice of our recommendation. Well, or do I do that? Yeah, we're doing it myself.
I don't know.
Hillary said yes.
Okay.
I mean, we have,
Just a second.
I think we have to notify both bodies that the school building committee, you know,
Has made the
has
recommendation.
made the recommation.
We made a recommendation.
James, can you tell her we?
Item 8, capital marketing campaign discussion. I don't know if you have an update, Don.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, we've talked about this a little bit in the presentation. Amy and I did start talking about how to tap into the PTOs and the PTAs. But similar to the other conversation about promoting it to the teachers, we just ran out of time.
Okay,
So I kept it on the agenda because it keeps me accountable so that I can.
I think the most important thing is if we can at least get a body to be a treasurer of this. Is it a PAC? Can we formally be PAC?
It's like a pact.
We need, because so that way we can at least start fundraising into that.
Yeah.
While we pull together the actual committee itself. So I think that's priority number 1. If we can get just one community member to head that up and be the quote unquote treasurer and get that opened.
I have somebody in mind who might be looking to that.
You can pick a school name, I think.
All right, any further comments or discussion on item 7, marketing campaign?
I mean, item 8.
Sorry, item 8. All right, item number 9, finance discussion. Harold, do you have any updates?
We did have PFM do a bond update. He did it on 95 million, and there's a reason for that, but have we shared that with everybody?
I don't think so, because it didn't make it into the presentation, I don't think.
No, we didn't have the updated
Yeah.
one that Steve did.
Yeah,
So I could send that out to everybody, so they can look at it from the 95 million perspective. And the reason why it was done at 95 was because the 5 million came from a grant. So it wasn't 100 million because that was, it's 2 different pots.
Okay,
But we can't do it at 100 million, but I don't think it's. That's up to this committee to decide if they want to.
We don't just have to do it at what we're bonding for.
Well, we'd still be bonding for 80 million.
Yeah.
But the 95 was the total of the project,
so why are we doing a workup for that?
because the other 5 million was a grant.
No, why are we doing a debt schedule at 95 when we're only bonding?
No, it's just the project amount, because the project amount would be based off of what you're getting in pay-go and your incentives.
so
I'd
the
like to-
debt, so the
we
debt.
gotta-
service-
we gotta work
service
this
would
out
still be-
for,
Your debt service would still be at 80 million.
When you roll up, the debt is just at the 80 million and it's all broken down. Those other numbers are just in there for visual to show people that what the actual project is.
You gotta
But
be
the
very-
bonding schedule is just about the 80 million. When we put it anywhere, yeah, you take those other numbers out of it. You wouldn't want to add them in.
That concerns me a little
Yes.
bit, because I've been saying 100 million, 100 million, 100 million.
He could put it in there.
I would probably say the less that's in there, the better. Really, people, in my opinion, that it's $80 million. I just want to know what the debt service is on $80 million.
So get rid of the project.
Well, you should all discuss that, but I'm just trying to.
Can we see, why don't we see what you're
Okay.
planning on using? Because in my mind, if you're saying total project, or we're only bonding for 80 million, it's 100 million. If there's a way of just saying, this is our bond, this is what the town is liable for, and this is what we want, I think that's better.
I think that's pretty simple to put together.
If I wish I had it to visualize it, I think there's a part of the document that shows the total project amount, and then it separates out your pay-go money and everything else to get down to the bondable amount, which would be the $80 million. So I think it just is represented on the document as 95.
The project amount is 95, so it brings it down to 79 million being the actual project.
We just have to make sure the numbers are consistent all the way through.
Yeah, because if anyone's, they're hearing 100 million, 100 million, 100 million, then they see a sheet that says 95 million.
Yes.
What happened to the 5 million? And why is that still bonding for 80 million if now it's 90?
It's a cleaner sell to say you're giving someone $30 in cash and getting $100 back, so. Just, and it articulates the 70% better.
I'd rather see the straight numbers. And the slide that you have, which shows the difference between 80 and 100, includes us getting money or revenue from selling the school buildings. And that's a question right now. It's not something we can plan on. You can plan on pay-go money, but you can't plan on selling those schools. So there's a leap there between 80, I think it's 80 and 100 on that slide. And what's the difference? It's the real estate sale, it's other grants, which we may or may not get. I think the cleaner, the more transparent we are, based on what we actually know can happen, that's the better route to take.
Yeah,
So we've got some unknowns in there between 80 and 100.
I think our only unknown is between 99 to and 100. It's only 800,000 that's in that. We're not sure grants and selling.
So,
properties.
but still, it's there.
No, I agree. I
It's still there.
mentioned that on other things before. Personally, I like the idea of having 100 million. Coventry not liable for this 8 million from the state. Coventry not liable for this 8 million from the state. Coventry not liable for this grant. You know, like break down all the things we don't have to pay for.
Yeah, the minus this.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea, but it just, well, how I'm picturing it visually. Kind of like Christine.
So we should have
Show
a finance conversation at some point and make sure that the town financial manager and Harold are on the same page. Make sure Steve Massaroni's on the same page, so the documentation is consistent and the numbers are consistent
Yeah,
all the way across the board.
it's already Wednesday, so, or
Perception is reality,
Thursday,
so
so
people
we'll
have
have to
something to
get
pick
this.
at.
We'll have to get to this.
And the message has to be consistent right out of the gate.
Mhm.
You can't keep on changing our numbers.
We've had pretty consistent ones.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to overly simplify it,
No.
but we're asking for $100 million of approval in projects. These are the projects, 100 million. We want RIDE to reimburse that for whatever we can maximize. And our path forward is an $80 million bond and taking advantage of other state incentives to close that gap.
But the numbers are kind of off though, right? Like the slide that has the dollar bill, it has 70-30. It's 100 million. You're only bonding for 80 million, so you're only getting 70% of the 80 million. You're getting, so to say we're getting 70 million from paid up the bond, because don't we have to pay some portion of some of those grants? So I mean, I just think the numbers a
That's
little.
built into the bond, I think.
Okay, I mean, if I just, when thinking about it, having this conversation, that feels a little off, but if you guys know that's right.
Well, Alita has the question, I have the question, so you really need to have one story.
Yeah, just to know what that real number is, to
No.
say we are paying, we're not paying 30 million, right? We're paying what?
So that whole 70-30 thing is really,
Just on the bond.
Yeah,
it's,
just to show.
really a high level illustration,
Yeah,
right? If we feel that that is misleading, then maybe we should take that out.
Yes,
And I'm fine taking that out. And maybe that's what we should do. What you don't want to lose sight of, though, is the reimbursement and the incentives that are coming to Coventry, which is 70%.
yeah.
Maybe instead of showing the 70-30 that equal 100, and we're talking about 180, blah, 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 that it's $100 million in projects, $80 million in bonds, $20 million in state incentives and other sources. And this is eligible for 70% reimbursement.
See, the problem is, the scenario, depending on which scenario and what the actual rate and number is. There's a pretty big variance if you look at this bond schedule on that. I mean, so it does range up to 2.4 million in total town cost. So you're talking right there, that's a 3.6% tax increase on that one. And the low one goes down to about 1.7 million, 1.8. But it's all gonna depend on what the numbers go out at when this thing goes to bond. So there's a wide variance in this, and we don't know until that point. Throwing this out there, guys.
Yeah, so it's fair then. So the point, I'm just trying to make sure they understand that the 70% reimbursement is probably the cleanest place to stick. Because of all of that, that's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a statement of fact that this is the percentage of which they will reimburse you.
is it exactly 70%? I thought.
It's
all
60.
it's that.
69.2.
Yeah.
69.2, so if you don't want me to say 70, I won't say 70, and we can stay to 69.2.
I mean, even 70 is not quite right.
Maybe we say 69. And at least that's factual.
That's factual.
I'm glad you're keeping me honest, which I appreciate.
But you've always been honest.
I am very honest. I just want to put you all in the best position to be successful. That's all. So it's all good. So we emphasize the 69%. And, you know.
We should plan.
I'll look for them, remember. On that. We'll get one combined thing out, and because well, for everybody here, because I think even if you're bonding at that, it's actually less of a bond than 80 million because of the incentives that you're getting throughout. That's being paid off by RIDE, so you're not really bonding at 80 million because it's being.
Well, it's careful.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to Robert and see how he wants to.
I keep it simple and factual. How about that? Those are really the only two things you need, simple and factual.
Right now, bottom line is 48 million payback from the town or 58 million. A range between those two
Right.
is what the actual total cost to the town would be. On, again, depending on the 5 or 5.5%, 15 versus 20. So you're gonna have that range, but it is a $10 million spread just on the 4 scenarios that we've had done up. So that's a 20% difference. It's 50 million, 48 million versus 58 million. That's a 20% difference on the low to the high.
Well, we can throw out the 15 now because we already got the FCI that basically comes in. So now we're at 20, so we can throw out 15 going forward.
Okay, so you're at. So the 20 at 5, we're looking at 48.8 million in payback. And if we're doing the 5.5 at 20. You're at 51.3, so that the 5.5% variance is about $3 million between the high and the low. So now you're talking about a 6% difference, and not quite as bad. That's when you start getting at that 15 is the one that'll kill it if it was that. So we almost, if it's gonna be the 20.
It is fun.
Then the old,
The reimbursement, the incentives.
yeah. Then the old,
Percentages, I got you.
and the only other thing is what the actual bond rate is gonna be. We're making the assumption between 5 and 5.5. Depending on where we are 3 months from now, 4 months, we don't know what that's gonna be. But yeah, that's your and his problem, not mine.
Because because the first pass at it actually came in at 4.5. So.
Yeah.
It changed.
Right, exactly. We don't know at this point.
Well, we have leadership team on Monday night, so that'd be a good time to before council. We'll talk about these two, but you can connect with Bob before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we'll need to
Because
make sure we have that information from Bill to put in the presentation Tuesday.
Yeah, and we also have to make sure that the members going on.
Yeah.
So I give people the voice.
And one last thing is that there is a component in the stage two that just says we have to provide the financing plan. So when this is established, I eventually will need to slip that in.
So that we should have that.
Yeah, no, we're fine, we're fine.
Any other comments on item 9, finance discussion? All right, moving on, review of project deadlines and timeline. We've kind of done this every step of the way. Does anyone have any questions about upcoming deadlines? The only one really is firming up the date for the vote for the council. I think it'll be the 7th and 9th of the 13th. That's what I can see right now. Before we get to this, I don't have it on here, but I just wanted to see when our next meeting would be. I think it's the 1st. Is that correct? Yep.
Excuse me, you said town council would either be the 7th, the 9th, or the 13th.
The 9th is, I mean, no, the 9th.
Oh, I think you wanted us to be the 7th because they're the next.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
7th or the 13th.
I'd have to clone myself between. the
Yeah, 7th or the 13th. So I can figure that out. Looks like our next meeting's on the 1st. Does that make sense? Anything we can think of that would work?
What would that agenda look like?
To me, that agenda should be purely capital marketing, messaging. Because at that point, we've now, the ball has been put in the court of the school committee in town. And we have to look forward to, I think you discussed the election and that schedule. I think you discussed your capital marketing campaign. And then I think you also, we need to have an item on that for thinking about what comments came up at both of the meetings on the 24th and the 26th. And if you need to refine anything ahead of those both meetings. The following.
Yep.
We'll now move on to item number 11, public comment. Do we have Zoom public comment available or no? Okay. With that, I'll seek a motion to adjourn at 8:25 p.m. Motion, second, all those in favor?